Hey everyone, welcome to the Vegan Stew. Really glad that you're here. We are back and it's April and it's exciting because it's Earth Month and it's April. It means the weather's getting better, hopefully for most of you, because it's been weird weather times. So let's see. If you'd like to win prizes, you know what to do. Hopefully, if it's your first time watching, go to virtualvegfestlive.com, hit the contest tab, and you can get entered to win 12 prize packs from our sponsors. They are Terra Seed, Hodo Foods, Veg Key, Cinnaholic, Fabulous, Bernie Wild's Adventure Sauce, Kathy Hester, Trupo Treats, BB Kids, Total Body Lab, Dojo Fresh, and Bitchin' Sauce. And this month, thank you to BB Kids for being our sponsor of our lives. They are also our Family Fun Zone sponsor at all our festivals, which is fantastic. We have an interesting start to our show this week because we have so much to talk about, especially when we're off for that week. And you never know what will happen while we're not actively live, but we are actively looking at what's going on in the world. If you want to comment or have any questions, put them in the little box and join the show. That's part of the way that you can be involved. And on YouTube, if you can subscribe to all our YouTube channels, that would be fantastic. Let me bring in the stew crew. We have Sovereign from Morella Morning. Possibly it's April 12th on the other coast. You'll have to let us know. Marla Rose from Vegan Street.
Hi.
Kayla is our registered dietitian. And we've got Ellen Jeffy Jones, the vegan veg coach, realtor extraordinaire in Florida. And Dr. Shayla should be here very soon. Let's see. Marla, I'm going to throw it at you to discuss the news article, and then we'll go into like some of the stuff that I said let's touch on.
Okay, that sounds good. This is a news item that was published in Veg News this last week, and it's kind of a weird story in the sense that, like, the fact of this really doesn't mean much to us because we don't probably those of us in this podcast don't really believe there is such a thing as humane slaughter. But the Animal Welfare Institute found that 85% of the animal welfare claims being made on packages of meat and other animal products were not substantiated. I believe I'm saying that correctly. It's something like almost half lacked any kind of substantiation, even if you believe in the idea of humane slaughter, or cruelty-free meat. It gets into how nebulous this territory is, and what a wild west it is, where you can stick some sort of label on a package of meat and basically just skate through any kind of making that substantive and making it real and valid. Imagine a vegan product going out to the market and having different kinds of stickers and not having those investigated, whereas there are all these people who buy meat, not necessarily cruel people, but believing the hoaxes around animal slaughter and compassionate use of animals. So anyway, for senators, I know that Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren, or two of them, are asking the USDA to look into this. It really sounds almost akin to consumer fraud. So anyway, I thought that was
one of my favorite shirts from the wonderful company, I think they're now out of business, correct me if I'm wrong, Herbivore.
Yeah.
And and I still have the shirt, is humane meat is hippie bullshit. It totally was. I mean, like, how did we even put those two words together? It's just
exactly
so many videos.
The things we kind of have to do is take a step backward as vegans and just say, yes, we know that, but You know what I mean? How blind
I
you
think the
wanna be.
marketing of the humane, because one of the common things I hear from people is, well, I only eat the grass-fed, cow, or the
Mhm.
the cage-free this or the grass-fed that or whatever. So, it's much better and healthier, because the marketing's been really good.
Right. And I think they're understanding something, which is that most of us want to feel good about our choices and want to feel like, we're not contributing to harm. Like it's several steps before someone goes vegan, but like at that fundamental level, it's almost like the halo effect around products, and just the idea, like when you dig a little into the idea of free range, it simply means that the birds might have one door open in what is a massively crowded football field, basically, that's indoors and have no access really to the outdoors. But that one open door somewhere that they can't get to designates that as a premium product people can feel good about buying,
Or they're willing to pay extra money for, and the corporations just figure out one way to get to the wallet.
The thing about humane meat, and this was brought up to me, they were like, well, I only eat humane meat. And I said, how humane is it? Because the result is they're slaughtered.
Yeah.
No matter
Exactly
what it
that.
is, no matter
Get
what it is,
animals
you're
to
slaughtering the animals so you can put it on your plate. So
Right.
maybe they're not going to a factory farm, but the person who raised them, who they trust, is the one cutting their neck or
Yeah.
cracking or breaking their neck so that you can have the food.
Right.
And the funny thing is about those farms, a lot of them don't actually do the killing. They send them to the factory farms for the killing part, even though they were raised in the beautiful grass and stuff. The slaughterhouses. That's right. Thank you, Marlon.
And there are fewer and fewer slaughterhouses. So because there's no money in this, I mean, the animals have to be driven longer and longer distances to be slaughtered now at these, far and few between slaughterhouses that are, and there's so many issues, like the lack of oversight. There's something, I think it's called like the 28-hour law or something like that, where the animals aren't supposed to be in the truck for longer than 28 hours without, water and all that. But at the same time, who's regulating that? Like the idea that people think that there's somebody at the end of the slaughter line
The
just
saving movement.
yeah.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, but like I think to your point, Helene, I think that's still just like somebody is thinking that that's enough, so there's like so many points further till they get,
Right. I don't normally do tabling, and I tabled for Piedmont Farm Animal Refuge at, I think, a Pride event. And I'm not normally that person. And this girl and her mom, I think, were standing in front of me, and they said this, and I just didn't think. I just blurted, and I realized I was like, maybe I was too direct there. No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that. Like I grew up Jewish, so I'm not slamming the Jewish people at all. But I've talked to a lot of people who believe that kosher means humane.
Right.
So we've talked about how that actually just means they're hung upside down, so they're not, lying in their own blood.
Right.
So there's an extra layer of torture, actually, So I think there's just so much education that needs to happen before the heart even opens. You know what I mean? There's so like people want to believe what they're being fed.
I think you've tapped into a very key word in our society and all over the world, and that's education. And that can be extrapolated to politics, society, making sure that,
some of it, people do know, for a certain extent, people wear blinders,
Yeah.
my mom always talks about, she grew up in South Georgia, and she always talks about when they would go visit her grandmother, and her grandmother had a farm, and, there would be the chickens running around, and then they finally put two and two together that the chicken that they were eating for dinner was what they had been playing outdoors with, and she would, tell them, well, yeah, I just cooked, such and such chicken. And then they were like, oh no, we're not going to eat this chicken. And they wouldn't eat it. So, even as kids, they were able to make that connection. So people, that we just, as a people, tend to put these blinders on to justify what we want to do.
Or, it's the cultural thing, like Melanie Joy's book, the title, Why We Love Pigs, Wear Cows and Eat. I probably just
But
got the title wrong, but it's like why we love one and not another. I mean, it just makes zero sense, especially with these phones that get in and record everything now. You really do have to stick your head in the dirt and pretend you don't see, because all of this stuff is so out there now.
Yeah, a lot of it makes no sense. Like, people somehow think that the few cows they see grazing while they're driving, on a road trip or something, supply all the dairy, all the milk. That's really not what's happening, But it does speak to our desire to believe that, right? So to me, that underpins this idea that we don't like it. We don't like the idea of suffering and cruelty and needless violence, so that gives me some hope, that we can work with that, but we have to get past the defenses, and people want to believe lies about the habits they want to continue, so, and I understand that, believe me.
But, as Dr. McDougall says, we want to believe the good news about our bad habits.
Yeah.
Right. It's everything. So it's a good segue to some more horrible news, which is that a woman in China died from bird flu. And Stephen read me the article today while we were driving, and that's a big deal because humans can't get bird flu until now. This was in February. She had other underlying conditions. I don't think it typically kills yet, but it is a virus and it can mutate. And how did it happen? That was my thing. How did it happen? They think from a wet market, which to me just says, stop eating animals.
Can I say something? I thought that people could get bird flu because, like, isn't the 1918 influenza? I think that was bird flu. I don't think people.
There has been another epidemic of bird flu and
the
swine flu.
Yeah.
Swine flu.
Right.
Flu, but this is from the birds, the avian. This is
right, but that's what I'm saying. Is people can get it. Usually just the workers or the people who are closest to the animals. But I
guess they don't usually die.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
But coronavirus, it started out real tepid, right? There's this little thing that we might want to pay attention to.
Right. So back in China, thank you for correcting, the bird flu killed a woman in March. And they weren't very upfront.
No. So that makes you wonder, what kind of deeper stuff? Because, the government's notoriously very tight-lipped about such matters.
Right. So that's what I mean. I just look at it and I say, one of the best ways to stop having coronavirus, and a lot of these viruses, swine, bird, whatever it is if we stop eating animals, producing the animals, putting them in wet markets, not exposing yourself to the animals in that sense, for their lives and for ours, we would all be better off.
Yes, we would.
I just need billions of people to make that connection.
Well, we've got 4 people viewing, maybe in playback.
So, right. Well, on the replay, we love when you.
But when it comes to viruses, though, there's so many things that play a part there. Even beyond what we're eating, especially with what we saw, like what you mentioned with coronavirus. And the thing about viruses, which makes them so hard to fight, is that they mutate. They mutate and they jump from, one way that they were transmitted to the next way. And most of the time it's just hard for the medical science to catch up with what the virus is doing, as we, clearly saw with coronavirus.
Yes.
As it spread like
As
wildfire.
my daughter, who majored in biology at Duke, said, that's their job, to mutate.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was one of
Yeah.
the things that we saw a lot especially, I mean, even today, but like in the early days of the pandemic, people getting really frustrated and angry that the information's changing. Well, it's a novel virus that's baked into the, like, it's new, and I mean, that was one of the things, is they had never seen something that worked quite like this, I mean,
Right.
sorry guys,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, they still don't know.
I think some people thought the word novel meant it was just made up and fictitious.
They were like, "Where are the pages?"
Right.
Just started.
I'm no scientist, but I know that, like, sometimes, it takes a hot minute, right, guys?
Yeah. Well, during COVID years, there were a lot of scientists on the internet.
Yeah. A lot of Google
of people.
scientists that,
Yes.
got their Google degree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the topic tonight is how to find your vegan niche, like in the community. But before we get there, I want to touch on a topic that came up this week between like me and Evan from Cotton Branch. And it wasn't a discussion. We had a conversation about something which led me to think about how people post stuff and say, I'm I'll use Black Lives Matter. Post Black Lives Matter. And just post that. People go ballistic. All lives matter. What do you mean? They go ballistic. It's a way of showing support. But then somebody posts the dicky thing of the All Lives Matter on their page. And it is racist, bigoted. It is just wrong. But why are we, when we post Black Lives Matter, in the right? And we are. And when we say we're pro-LGBTQ, when we say that we're pro-medicine, we're pro-science, when we post truths, when we post things that support other human beings, other animals on this planet, we are posting truths that we need everyone to come on board with, because we're a society that needs to build each other up as opposed to push each other down. And I think it's an interesting topic to touch on because the people who are posting All Lives Matter and trans people are, what did the politicians say? Mutants? Golden mutants. I mean, they're posting this stuff. COVID doesn't exist. It's just like the flu. I mean, all these things that have been posted on social media. Whereas they call us snowflakes because we get all upset because it's like, what's wrong with you? Like, it's not true. Like, how could you hate somebody because of the color of their skin, the way they dress, their lifestyle, or anything about them? Because it has absolutely, what impact it has on you? Zero. Nothing. And I think it's an interesting topic to say, well, how do we explain to people why what they're posting is wrong when they're telling us what we're posting is wrong?
Yeah. Well, the resounding theme that typically, is the case is that just because you're pro Black Lives or pro LGBT rights doesn't mean that you're negative against white lives or the opposite of that. And I think that's the part that people miss. Just because that you're pro this doesn't mean that I'm anti that.
We're so used to being polarized now.
Right.
It's a right and wrong society. There's just
and also I think capitalism sets us up to think about things as finite supply, like this idea of like rights are not pie. Just because there's plenty of pie for everyone. So, but I think that there may be a root in this whole like competitive, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, rugged individualistic ample quotation marks around that mentality in the United States that, like, you know, if somebody posts something in support of LGBTQ people, I don't happen to be part of that community, though I try to be as good an ally as I can be. It doesn't take anything away from me if somebody supports like, to me, it's like it speaks to an insecurity, you know, like Black Lives Matter. That is important to say because it needs to penetrate the minds of so many people. Like, that is so basic, but yet so important to convey at this state. Like, we're not at the point yet where we can be all lives matter. That's maybe in 100 or 200 years, but right now we're still just trying to establish this basic truth. So,
You know, I think
yeah.
one of our biggest problems is that fear is such a part of our culture globally now. And, you know, those in control know how to appeal to our sense of fear. And I think one of the funniest lines I heard about Biden ending the national emergency on COVID is, we now all have a lifetime supply of toilet paper. And it's just that we're so to like go down that rabbit hole, and Lord knows how many rainforests we've cut down so that we all would have enough toilet paper. But this is just an example of how the irrationality of
so irrational
concepts has just blown way, way out of control. I mean, when we talked about this as a possible topic, and I'll just add this and then turn over the floor here. Our real estate board, the National Association of Realtors, this year is making just their number one priority is homes for all. And just realizing that no matter how many initiatives, I mean, as a young reporter, I covered redlining, and it's like some things just have not changed. And in 50 years, we are still facing these same critical issues and problems that have to be addressed in very real ways.
Right. And Black Lives Matter, like, I don't want to speak too much about it because I'm not a Black person, but it is specifically born of police brutality. And so, like, the fact that it needs to be said is just a fact, you know, that Black lives don't matter when under certain circumstances. And so I just feel like we need, I think you're absolutely right, Ellen, that people prey upon the fear. But I also think that it just is such a baked in fundamental part of the human animal, you know, and a lot of times, unless we take a moment, have a breath, look inside and say, why am I feeling so agitated by this notion? We can say, okay, I was feeling insecure. I felt threatened. I felt this, I felt that. It was irrational, but, you know, but more people are just, or too often people are just reactive.
And it's very mature of you to be able to make that
well,
pause.
I'm not saying I'm always there.
I know, but it is not an easy thing. If that
Mm-hmm.
was easy, then the divorce rate probably wouldn't be over 50%.
Right.
With couples, because you want to take that breath and you want to realize, oh my gosh, I'm going to say that I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'd rather go get a gun that's really easy to get in the South now and go shoot people up and kill them.
All I can say is I just spent 8 days in the car with my husband. So things were said at various points where we drove through a tornado, some sort of belt flew off of our car in Arkansas. So there were definitely moments, our serpentine belt, that I was not at my most elevated. But the best thing you can do is, like, I told my husband, and I believe this is true for all of us, I don't even like myself when I'm doing that, when I'm acting like that, when I'm saying those things. I'm not like feeling good about myself. And I feel like that's true of everyone when we're lashing out and we're just coming from that reactive, fearful place. But like, people understand that it's such a primal part of us, you know? and it's hard to
Yeah.
step aside.
Well, we all have,
Yeah.
we all have biases. The studies have shown that, and that's, regardless of your race or your culture, everyone has a bias towards something. And it does just seem like when people say Black Lives Matter, it just brings out to the forefront those real fears and biases of others, because it is not that it's anti anything else. And so I would look for people to take it that way. And, we're even seeing the same thing when it comes to abortion rights right now. To be pro-choice doesn't mean that you don't like babies, or you want to see death of babies. It doesn't mean that. It means that people should
Babies
have
have
the
no
right
part
to
in it.
choose for their bodies. Right. But people just take it so far to the extreme to bring out their own fears and to bring out their own biases, instead of seeing it more as an equality type of thing,
Right.
which is what it really should be.
The anti-abortion activists are probably very similar in feelings to the activists for the animals.
Sometimes
Because-
there is crossover, yeah.
Because that is
Mhm.
what they express. People who go to the vigils and people who are fighting for the animals,
Mhm.
they express similar feelings
Mhm.
that people who are against abortion feel for those babies. What they feel for those babies is what the animal activists feel for the animals. Nowhere do they understand that unless they actually are on the same side with both of those things. But it's very interesting because I didn't really think of it like that until this moment.
Mhm.
Because you care,
No,
the
yeah.
animal activists
Yeah.
care so much for the animals. They're
Mhm.
willing to get arrested. They're
Mhm.
willing to lay their bodies down, potentially die for those animals. And
Mhm.
the people who are anti-pro-abortion or who are anti-abortion would probably do the same for that unborn
They would,
baby
but,
that they'll
like,
never
the-
take care of
yeah.
after the baby's born.
Right. I
And that's the
having been
problem.
an activist
After the baby's born.
After the baby's born. At least the animal rights activists, guess what they do? They save the animals and they save the animals.
Right.
They raise money. They ask people to help. They get people to drive them across the country. They do all these things for these animals. That compassion in humans
Mhm.
does not extend to the born baby.
Well, and that's a really important thing, is that we see the whole follow through on the big picture of it. And also, having been an activist for a long time, I definitely know I don't like getting involved in any kind of activism for the animals that has a similar vibe as anti-choice activism, of like bloody fetuses on signs. I don't want any part in that, because that's just like, it's rooted in shame, it's rooted in aggression, and I don't feel like it's all that effective. But the other thing I will say is that now that we're having these draconian laws that are, if not actively killing, the people who have uteruses who can carry these babies, there are people who are hemorrhaging. There are people who cannot, like I think I mentioned before, I had a miscarriage before I had my son, and I had to have a DNC, which was standard practice when a miscarriage is incomplete. Now it is not offered in these different states. You can die of infection and hemorrhaging. And so the point is, this is not just a notion. There are people who are in serious jeopardy, because having a baby is really one of the most fraught things that you can expose yourself to. There are so many things that can go wrong, and we're turning the clock back. But the point is, I guess, like, you can be anti-choice, but the fact is, like it would be like us being pro-vegan, but like not looking about all the other animals that we're killing because of our choice to be, like, they are willfully allowing people who do not choose to have an abortion even necessarily to die and to suffer. And these are primarily people who are not affluent, women of color, people of color, and just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And there are all kinds of news stories right now going on about people who are very close to death because they can't get the full spectrum of medical care that they deserve and they need.
Yeah.
So I'm
And
just
we
saying
live in a country, you know, as an industrialized nation with one of the highest maternal mortality rates. And so it's like, why aren't we focusing on that instead of, you know, trying to eliminate abortions?
it exposes
You
the
know,
hypocrisies. All of it.
we are doing a terrible job.
Shayla, you broke up a little bit, but to
Oh,
go
did
back,
I break up? Yeah.
most of it
Oh.
though.
Go ahead.
No, to go back to the original piece that I started with, the one thing we haven't addressed is how do we explain to somebody that they're posting their anti-posts as wrong? How do we convince those people that that's wrong? Like, I get our points. I get why our points matter. I get why what we're doing. I get why we're on the correct side of history. I get that. How do we explain to these people that they're not? And that when you put, because they're only going to say is, well, you posted that, so why can't I post this? I have free speech. And it's like, okay, you have free hate.
I say post on your own wall what you want. You know, it's and also like the medium is just not good for conversations and for changing opinion. Like I think that people have tried it and it just is not amenable to that kind of thing. Sorry.
Why is it good to bring it up? Because it doesn't. You need to call them out regardless. We live in a very, very, very driven social media-wise in terms of everything operating. There are teenagers on this app. There's generations that are learning. They need to be called out because if you don't, you're being silent. And being silent is being complacent. And we are in 2023. Silence is not golden. It needs to be called out. There is no whose feelings are going to be hurt or whatnot, especially when it's coming from people either closest to you, posting something that you know they should not. I'm sorry, but if you're going to take this type of view, my feeling, this is speaking from me, because I did it, especially when Trump was elected and people were extremely anti-BIPOC. I don't care if it's 3 minutes, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, 300 years, and eternity. If I see that you are all for hurting someone else and don't want to listen, our friendship and communication is cut. I will check you because you need to be. And normally people who post a lot of anti where it shouldn't be anti are people who have never been checked. So they continue. And it's not being woke, it's being correct. It's not being, I don't know how to PG this word I want to say, but not being arrogant, if I have to put it that way. Not being...
You said arrogant. I'm so offended. No.
Not being afraid to call people out on what should be called on. You know, we just cannot afford to, not anymore, because it's just not like myself or, you know, my friends or all of us here. There's a younger generation, they're susceptible. And then you don't know who is teaching it. It just continues. Like it's a vicious cycle. So, you know, don't be afraid. Especially being vegan, do have a lot of anti-science, and that turmeric is going to fix everything or cure everything. And I love turmeric. It does have these properties. It does. But it is not going to cure all. It's not. I think that...
Marla can speak to this.
You know,
Her husband had leukemia. She had to actually post on her social media, like, don't offer me essential oils or whatever you had to post during that time. Like, we're going modern medicine. I mean, great. Maybe we'll eat some raw food.
Yeah.
But we're not doing that because I want my husband to survive. And I'm speaking from Marla right now. Like, she's not here, but I won't forget that because every time someone posts something, I have cancer, they're suddenly like,
alkaline.
Have you tried?
Have you tried alkaline? Have you tried this? Don't eat this. Drink a whole bunch of alkaline water. No.
Not that it's anyone's business if we did this, but as though like we don't know that is good to eat vegetables and like this is like, wait, I shouldn't only be eating Impossible Burgers. What? This is new. Like, we're so dumb. You know? But I think
You
too,
know, Steve had like a cancer scare of, maybe having a cancerous colon tumor in his colon. I started him on smoothies immediately.
yeah,
I was like, you know
smoothies are
what?
great.
You're going to drink some fruits and vegetables in your smoothie form every day.
There you go.
Because I don't know where this is going to go, but we're going to start here.
Yeah.
And it's continued, just so you know. As long as I make it, he'll drink it.
I think Sovereign kind of
And it doesn't hurt, but like the point Sovereign makes is that don't think that it's gonna, like this miraculous cure, or else, we all would have done it. Yeah.
You've heard it. I've heard it coming from my experience on both ends. You have seizures. This. I said, okay, thanks. I'm still seizing. I've been vegan since I was 16. That's not solving everything. If you tell me to sniff one more thing, I will punch you somewhere. Then with children on the spectrum, we hear it all the time.
Right.
You have kids on the spectrum? This essential oil, this blend. doTERRA?
Did you get them vaccinated, your children on the spectrum? Because
Oh my gosh. Yes, as they were before. Like, it's just, it becomes where you're just like, okay, enough. Because yes, herbs, fruits, vegetables, nature does play a pivotal part in helping us to stay healthy. But you must be a realist. And when you see these posts in these groups where they're like telling people who do have terminal illnesses, who may have tried every single way that you can think of holistically, and still doing it naturally, still eating healthy. The cancer cells are not like, oh my gosh, grape juice, and go away. So
we actually, got some blood drawn, and we're able to see that happening. Okay, running out.
Right, corrected. You should record it. TikTok. They go hand in hand, but it is very. It's very helpful when you have people that say or post anti and they know you or your views or someone suffering from something that you know fully well cannot be rectified by this particular thing. So then you're like, were you smiling in my face the entire time? And it becomes hurtful. So will I call you out on it? Yes. Because you're showing your true self in a way. If it's been years and years and things like that, and you know my views, and you were just, this is a trend. It's a slap in the face. So I absolutely say there's so much happening right now in the world. Having no filter sometimes is a good thing because it's needed.
Right. That's what what's her name from Sweden, the young environmentalist
Greta
Thunberg says
Thunberg.
her superpower is being on the spectrum, because she doesn't really give a shit, luckily enough, about what other people think, and she's very blunt and to the point, and we need more of that. So
Absolutely.
more niceties, more to the point. And I think, to your point, Sovereign, this idea of polarization, that it can only be all natural or all chemical, is just ridiculous. I mean, we did everything. Our doctors were happy with, like, my husband's still alive and he did well, I don't know what would have happened if we chose a different route. Nobody knows, but that was the way he wanted to go. So we did. The other point I wanted to make, Sovereign, that you made me think of when you were talking was, I had this thought the other day that maybe part of what's going on with this defensive reaction to not being included in everything, of like Black Lives Matter or whatever, is people who are used to being centered suddenly, for the first time in their lives, not being centered, and the rest of us are used to that, we've had I'm not making excuses for it, but I'm saying, like, it may feel kind of like shocking to them, even though that's ridiculous, but that this is their first time of really engaging with that,
I mean, that white people rule the world, but they really don't.
What's that?
Yeah. Well, there's a phrase that, especially those of us within the BIPOC community, even the LGBTQ community, is like, you want to be us, but you don't want the suffering that comes with.
They want all your stuff.
Exactly. You want all the coins, you want things for free. But when people who are marginalized need you, communities need you, you're not there. You'll post and put on your, let's put change my avatar to, science and Black Lives Matter. And they were like, all right, well, Black lives do matter. I'm glad you recognize that. Here's what we need you to do if you are a true ally. There's trust issues. And then there's history. So we're like, we really know that we're stronger together. We want to make sure that our community knows that we're stronger together. But for those who are on the right side of right and know that there's no absolute reason to treat a human being the way that we are being treated. This has just gone down, and people will say, oh, it happened 400 years, 500 years, 600 years plus is not that far away. It's not that behind us. History always repeats itself. Look what is happening right now. Look what's going on within the trans community. We are playing into a period of history that you didn't think we would ever go down. We're on the flip side now. This is
We
just
still have Nazis.
Yes, we
still have people, trying to defend the right for Nazis to march in the streets and to harass people. So yeah, totally.
Taking a stand is always going to be, the battle is never going to be easy. The battle's never going to be short, but the battle needs to continue to be fought because there's generations that are coming after, and we have to look and say, what do we look in their faces and tell them, what did we do? In every means that we can. We have to keep going. That's how majority of us are here that have gone through things that are painful. It doesn't mean that it's ended, but we don't want it to repeat. So we still got, in the words of RuPaul, we got to work.
We do, because they don't want to see another Holocaust.
Yep.
I think that's the issue with sweeping stuff under the rug and playing nice and, just trying to not make a fuss. Is the real issues don't get addressed, and like systemic racism continues, structural racism continues, Nazis keep popping up.
No one wants to buck the status quo, because your life is good, your house is good, you've got food on your table, your job's going well, and around you there's literally gunshots flying and killing children in every community. And you just want to keep driving to work every day, because your world is okay.
I drove by a bus stop this morning, and it blew my mind. I saw this child just clinging on to her father. And I was thinking, I am so glad I don't have children right now, because I can't imagine letting go of them, going off to school and worrying all day that they might not come home. I mean, that just wasn't even on my radar when my kids were going to school, and how far we have fallen down such these terrible rabbit holes.
But look what's going on in Tennessee. Look at how they're refusing to accept that. I think the critical mass, I just think that this is a fire that the GOP is not going to be able to put out, because people are fed up and sick of it, and they know how these Congress people are voting, and their inaction and their racism and their, I'm going to swear, but I'm not, effing thoughts and prayers that shove up their collective asses. I think that the fact is that those are unpopular. If people are allowed to vote and gerrymandering, even despite gerrymandering, they're losing, despite all their efforts to keep people from voting and for every vote being equal, they are continually losing, and they are not able to they poked the bear in Tennessee most recently, two Congress people, and
they're back.
They had to have some very Hail Mary kind of conversations about how are we going to walk this back? And
they are.
They're back. Have those conversations. I think.
Yeah, I know they're back.
Forward.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but how are they going to save face? And so many just didn't even show up for that.
They can't.
Right, but and Sovereign, your kids' generation, my kids' generation, Shayla. I feel sucky that they inherited such garbage, but on the other hand, they're here for it, you know?
They
So,
are feral.
yeah.
They're like Generation A, Generation Alpha, and Gen Xers are like, they are aware of what is happening. The very fact that you have 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds, even 5-year-olds that are they're not stupid. I really have to give a lot of props to animators and things like that, in particular like Cartoon Network, Disney Junior, Nickelodeon, the BBC, that have their art, their animators, their writers for those episodes are all millennial parents. It's just like where there's more openness, so kids are not stupid. But you look at the conversations that are going on, just like you said, having to sit there. Ellen, you were like, when you see children that are sitting by the bus stop and they are clinging on to their parents, it's like a double-edged sword, because some parents do not have the ability to be able to homeschool. They must work. Either there's one parent, so they're taking care of the kids, or maybe the other spouse has a disability, or they're not both bringing enough in. Whatever the circumstance, some people can't. There have been so many conversations, and then you're like, well, kids are not socializing with each other because of homeschooling. I'm like,
That's not true. There's a
Exactly.
whole homeschooling community
oh,
where they
absolutely.
together.
People who don't think. They think that there's no socialization for children who are homeschooled.
Furthest thing from the truth. Yeah.
I've gotten into this conversation with my mother, and they'd be like, well, the kids are not social. I said, first and foremost, it was disturbing because after Nashville, you had parents, it started to stream and catch on with parents of children who are special needs. We disassociate because we're like, for those that we do have to drop off, there are some schools that say they will leave the children last if they think that they are going to get in the way of a rescue. And that is a lot of special needs children who are not verbal, who cannot walk. They will leave them there.
Right. Or process things slowly.
Yes.
Right.
So I just kept thinking about Amma and Kenna.
Emma.
He gets nervous. Kenna gets extremely anxious. He will freeze. Amma, if you say, we have to go, in a panic, he will stomp because he's not understanding. If you say, be quiet, he has echolalia. The gun person is not going to be like, oh, look, it is a special needs class. They will target whoever they need to target. They hear it. There are teachers that are saying they will shield them. I'm not supposed to do this. I'm a special needs teacher, but I will shield these babies with my life. No teacher.
They do. They do, though.
But
they will, because I have one thing about teachers, and I know a lot of them, they will protect your children with their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the fact that it's come to that
It's
they
so
have
sad.
to.
Oh my god, it's so sad.
Because that's what they have to think of. They're in a school every day. I can't. Teachers.
We had tornado drills. We were
Right.
Yeah, that was the biggest
Fire
concern.
drills.
Yeah, for us.
But that's what teachers. They can't go into a classroom and not think about this at this point
Yeah.
in their
Yeah.
jobs. People who work in a bank, your bank might get robbed. I think that's a risk that you if you're a police officer, you kind of know you're going to maybe face the barrel of a gun or have to shoot yours at some point in your career, which typically is not often. Because I've spoken to police officers about it. But you are taking on a job that has a higher element of risk. Teachers aren't paid enough for that element of risk. Teachers shouldn't be in a position where they have to think and how they're going to protect the probably overpopulated classroom that they're sitting in front of with 30, 40, 50 kids.
Well, and they get no relief because between that ever-present fear that something could happen, even from a student,
Right.
but there's
A 6-year-old
also
knows.
there's also the school board meetings where people act, the right wing, let's name it, is exactly what it is, acts absolutely psychotic and deranged and violent about supposed CRT in the classrooms of like third graders.
Or the books. What about that library? I don't know what state it's in, but
Florida.
it's that
Of course, it's
Is
Florida.
it because they said that they're going to.
That was in Tennessee too, where they banned books. They asked for parents to come volunteer because they had to take certain books out of the library by a certain time. It was so ridiculous.
Well, the federal judge said the books have to go back. So I'm not sure what that is, which state it was in. And the county or city, whatever, said, we'll just close the libraries.
Yeah. I mean,
But they
like,
have to put
you,
laws back.
if you're a teacher, do you want to be sent to prison, which is on the table in Florida? You're
Yeah.
teaching your kids to read about Martin Luther King
Mhm.
from a book that, some of the parents feel like, oh, it's too negative. They don't want them to read about Anne Frank and Ruby Bridges and Martin Luther King. Like, that's like, so, like, what? It's
There
the
was
same with nurses during the time of COVID. Why would you want to be a nurse when people are acting so violent? I mean, like, because your heart is in it. That's what called to you.
Mhm.
All the people I've ever known who are teachers, and I know a lot of teachers, were compelled because they love children. They love being in
Teach.
that role. Yeah.
They like teaching.
Yeah, at a
Some of the
certain
teachers
point,
are absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Some can't handle it.
Well, this makes it even worse because any heart that you had, not only are you dealing with the fact that you don't know who's going to walk down the hall, you don't know what falling chairs or anything else is just a falling object and not a gun going off. You're dealing with PTSD and anxiety from the teachers and the children
right.
who are like, I don't want to be there. You know, tornado drills were a big thing when I was very little. Then bomb ones were the next one. And then school shooting drills took over when I was in high school. More rapid than it would be because we had people who would call in right after Columbine, and just call and think it's cute. It's so funny to have it wrapped up so we're just outside. So we're like, are we sitting ducks? We're all out here from right in front of the school. We don't know who's hiding where.
Right.
Now, again, you're worrying about the kids doing it, and then you're passing things where it's a felony crime for children to read, for people to do a job that they love, but are really like, no. But I will say that it's great to know that you have teachers that are like, all right, I will quit. I'm done. And they go to homeschooling. They're like, I just don't have to teach in a building. But then again, at the same time, it breaks their hearts because they love being around the kids. They love that interaction, that building of social discord. And it's like, is the gun now? What is it? Florida? Yeah. So doesn't matter. You can carry concealed. You don't need nothing. He just signed that, and this is. It's going to be just, again, the worst parts of history are repeating themselves, and the greatest parts that we have had so far have regressed.
I will say that I think that the overreach, let us hope that the arrogant overreach is going to blow up in their faces. I hope so. I mean, Florida really loves DeSantis for some reason. Lots of Florida does.
It's because they all moved there, so it's all good.
Yeah.
If they all just go to Florida, then they just stay out of Disney because they hate Disney, so I don't have to worry about dealing with them there. And then
I mean, like, I think that we can't just write it off as a Florida problem, or
it's not. I know.
It's just like, what's in our own backyards? How can we, model a better example? But like, I think it's very convenient, and I've definitely done my share of it. Is like, pointing at Florida and laughing, but this is a whole system-wide issue in this country, right? Some states are a little more advanced than others, but yeah.
Some states just don't have any more F's to give.
Yeah.
And they're all the majority. Let's just be honest. It's a lot of it's coming out of the South. Just another can, or everything has just imploded, and I don't understand. It goes to show a level of not even really caring about how it affects them. It's just a hate.
Yeah.
It's just a hate. We are in power. We're going to sign these laws. Yeah, we're probably going to either croak or whatnot, but at least I have signed and it's been passed to keep it running for whatever time period. And then make it difficult for it to be overturned by not having those that come in to represent your demographic and the diversity that it is to make a change. Let's block it. They don't want progress.
It's amazing to me that any of this. It used to be, how are things polling?
Yep.
Because if things are polling a certain way, we need to, and we go against that, we're not going to have our jobs. And then they figured out a way around it.
Well, that's voter interference. Yeah.
I don't know. So our topic this week is how to find your niche in the vegan community. And I kind of feel like what we're talking about lends itself to that topic without actually talking about that topic. Because the one thing I think we all have in common is intersectionality and how important that is. And there's a lot of people in the vegan community. Well, there are people in the vegan community that are Nazis.
No.
I know, right? And,
I had
and they're in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So, because we've dealt with them. And yeah, it's awful. So, but I think for the most part, I mean, I think that's a horrible niche to have in the vegan community is that you just care about the animals, you don't care about people.
Yeah.
But they're there.
Oh yeah, they're there.
They're there. And they make themselves known,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it it's hard. It's hard. I mean, what do you do?
Let them have it.
Out them. You out them. You publicly draw attention to them.
They're
Yep.
outed.
You know.
Good.
They removed themselves from social media. They were doing good stuff, and then it all goes away.
I know which ones you're talking about.
Possibly. I know the mom of one.
Oh, maybe it's maybe not the same.
So, and it's hard. It's your kid. Your kid's like a Nazi,
Okay.
vegan but a Nazi. So
Okay.
it's like erase. I know. This was something Stephen would say. He'd be like, if my brother raped somebody and killed them, I wouldn't support my brother anymore because he
No.
raped somebody and killed them.
Report it. Jail, outing. For.
You know?
If I get my hands on you, then the police are not needed because you won't exist anymore. Called out. Nazism, fascism of any kind, I do not care if you're a vegan. Nazis are not allowed in our community. They're not.
Right. I mean, I think you're doing a disservice to the animals by not drawing attention to the fact that these people are terrible and they're not representative of all vegans and they need to be shunned, you know? But yeah, I agree with Donna saying the
Ooh, yeah, they are.
conspiracy vegans are out of control. They have been for years.
Is that their niche? Is that what they've decided?
Get back to Nisha.
In their vegan community, that's what they've decided. I'm going to be anti-vax and believe that the world is flat. I just said that post, Marla. The people in Australia upside down because the circle if the Earth was round, the people in Australia are upside down because they're the other side of the planet, and there's something called gravity. Well, let's forget about that piece. But I was like, for the people in Australia, does that mean we're upside down?
Yes.
You know what? It's not even worth arguing.
No, exactly.
The topic is what is our niche, and I think just like I don't even know how to segue that, but one of the I've been a runner.
Athletic realtors. Yeah.
And when somebody said to me at a race once, "Oh, you can't run on a vegan diet," that kind of ignited me in me this fire to prove otherwise. And I really am not that fast a runner. I'm not that good a runner. But I found that if you show up at the start line and then as you age up and you start collecting all these things, all of a sudden then you start getting this attention. And it was, for me, my passion to show that vegans get enough protein. I mentioned before the broadcast, I'm going to do my first bodybuilding contest this weekend, which is just hilarious. I mean, the last category age group they have is over 55. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to win my age group. But
I'm going to start running so I can win in the 90-year-old.
Yeah. And you will totally get first. No question about it. But it's like for me, it was just trying to figure out how do I get the message out? That was always the motivator. And I just sort of want to transition into a more positive way because we can't argue the flat earthers. I mean, it just, we don't really want to go there. But we each have, I know Kayla, you have been just kind of quiet on this call, but you are an amazing force for athleticism and helping people find their start line. And we need more people like you and others to inspire people to find their niche, whatever it is, to be the voice for the voiceless. That is ultimately what this is all about, because we have to bear witness, however we do it, and show people that all of these things are possible. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Kayla,
I
talk
agree.
to us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, I did want to add, like, when we were talking about everything, what I kept thinking about was like, well, people don't want to admit that they're wrong, right? And I find that, like, when I decided to become a dietitian in the first place, it was because I wanted to teach people how they could, live a healthy lifestyle and how nutrition is so important. But then I found, wow, people just want to believe what they want to believe. They don't want to admit that they're wrong. They don't want to admit that they're killing animals. They don't want to see that, right? And so I had so many roadblocks. But then when I felt passionate enough where I felt like this could help a lot of people, and seeing how much people, when they have gone vegan, that it has helped their health and turn that around and pretty much save them from dying. I decided that was something as a dietitian that I wanted to promote. And I think at first it was really hard to promote being a vegan dietitian because there was so much backlash and the government wasn't really behind us on the plant-based movement. But I think it's pushing forward, which is really exciting. And then for me, like Ellen, I've been a runner my whole life. So for me, it just made sense to put those two things together and help those that are plant-based runners, because I think a lot of runners may be interested, but maybe they're scared, or they hear all those things that Ellen mentioned of like, you can't be a vegan runner, but you can. So I was like, well, I'm going to help these people because I want people to feel like they can be plant-based, they can be vegan, and you can run and be athletic and do all of those things. But there is a lot of still like fear around that, or people believe like they still believe that they can't do that.
Right.
When in reality, there is some research that shows that it can be beneficial eating more plants, because we're getting all these antioxidants and all these foods that are actually really helpful. So anyways, yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's so important, as we are all doing in our various ways. I mean, I think Sovereign is probably like the finest example of someone who's like, I am the Nigerian, child of immigrants who's really into goth culture and vegan. So like, there are a dime a dozen, I know, but I'm saying they're putting themselves out there.
A lot of boxes.
The more that we can show, I am these things, these are my passions, these are my hobbies, and that people can envision themselves then as vegans. Dr.
Right.
Shayla, the same thing. It's just like she's a Black woman, MD, and a vegan. So it's like the more we can kind of model diversity, true, actual, diversity, the better all around, So I think that like your niche is just like, don't give up your passions just because you're vegan, find new ways to express them if you have to, but nobody, including me, who's like, a big time vegan. I don't want to be around people who just talk about veganism all the time. It's boring, like, I mean, it's that my main passion in life, but at the same time, you have to have other interests. And I think that's what the niche thing is about, is your full person, your full personhood,
It's really interesting. I didn't start this intentionally, but when I work with customers who are looking at property, it's usually a full day or two. And so we go out to eat, they see what I'm eating, and then they start asking questions. And, by the end of our transaction, it's like, okay, I'm going vegan if I can do what you're doing. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. So leading by example and, using your passion to kind of share the joy with others, however that oozes out into all aspects of your life. I think it's important.
Right. Yeah, I was going to mention something similar, Ellen. Yeah, that's how it typically happens. For a lot of us, you aren't just like walking around with a kale leaf on your, your chest or whatever. Right. But it does. You go to an event or you go, somewhere and people are looking like, what's on your plate, or wondering why you're not eating the charcuterie, dish or whatever that everybody else is. Yeah, you got to put a necklace on it, Ellen, so you can.
Sandwich board.
Yeah. Ellen, do you put those on your for sale signs and stuff too?
Yeah. Well, actually, the Facebook page, the Vegan Realtor. So, you got to just keep brainstorming, find ways to get it out there.
Right.
I think that's great. And obviously, I think most of you know that my thing is producing the vegan festivals, and that is my activism, and it keeps me very busy. And it is a great way to reach people who are not vegan, and bring them into the fold and say, hey, here's some place where you can experience something you're potentially unfamiliar with and realize that it's actually pretty familiar, because Banana's vegan.
Right.
Because we can talk about people hating vegan food, meanwhile they're eating it all the time. Because they just, ignorance is bliss. And also people like to complain, and people like to tell you what you're doing is wrong and why you need to do something differently than what you're doing it. And I mean, as vegans, we're pretty notorious for doing all those things. But at the same time, we're coming from a place of save the planet.
Yeah. I think we have a reason and a right.
I think it's more obvious now than it's ever been.
Right.
Why we are dedicating our lives and fighting every single day for you all to make a difference in your lives. Because what you're doing actually is directly impacting us because of climate change, because we're destroying the planet. We're killing all these innocent animals. And you're dying sooner than you probably should because of the food that you're consuming. We just care. And I mean, I get that you have to care. As we're speaking to people, if they're not vegan watching this, I get that you have to care. You have to, and nobody's going to make any changes unless they decide to make those changes. I just hope that the reason you make the change isn't because the doctor told you you're dying, or because the tornado took your home.
Whatever it is, beggars can't be choosers.
Right. I don't know which one is better. The tornado taking your home, or the doctor saying, you have heart disease.
As I like to say, people get desperate on their deathbeds.
Yeah,
and I see it happen in my cooking classes all the time.
Yeah, that's what usually happens. That's what I see when people change their diets, is when they are diagnosed with diabetes. Oh, I should probably change what I'm eating. I should probably start exercising.
But the thing that one of the aspects of it, I think, and why we're perceived as so obsessed and, emphatic is, I feel like it's the best decision I ever made. It's given me so much back into my life to be vegan. And I think sometimes you can be a little on the side of, being preachy because, or people interpret it that way, because you just really want people to understand, and it's not only the loss of things, it's not only the sad things around why we want people to go vegan, but also the empowerment things. We want people to understand what a enriching, good decision it is. It's just it's sustaining me. All the like, I went vegan in what, like 1995. I'm still like this. I'm still crazy for being vegan, but I want people to be able to tap into their feelings of self-empowerment around this, that we don't have to accept, things that hurt us,
Well, you feel better, both emotionally, and there have been studies that support this, that generally speaking, we have a better frame of mind, and just feel better about life on an emotional, spiritual, and physical level. And it's like when you come back from being sick and you realize like how good everything tastes, how good you feel, or what it's like not to have a fever. It's the same thing being vegan. It's like,
Such a good point. Yeah.
how did I ever not do that kind of thing?
Mhm.
That's a good point.
Okay, so here's a little rant. Okay, niches. Everybody knows my niche. But
You okay?
yes, I'm okay.
Hi.
Because,
Hi, Auntie.
okay, Auntie, that is my son. So here's the other niche, parenting. I think it's also great to. I don't remember who someone said. You are the walking embodiment of inclusion, because of everything that I can actually say that I am a part of, and not for trending. If it comes with mental health, if it comes with, autism, if it comes with, being a person who is queer, being a person who is of color, being a person who is in an alternative, not a, like, I would say the alternative niche, I hate to say that, but subculture, the goth and alternative subculture that are many of us, but you don't see many faces, even though that is changing. Being someone who is non-binary, it's one thing to be a part of the community, but, you also just don't want to say, I'm queer. It affects us all, but when you know that there's legislation being passed against trans and non-binary individuals, it's like, we need to remember to channel and, Stonewall and things like that. Being someone who is very active in regards to the environment, someone who's active on health, someone who's active on so many things. And it's not to take a badge or, throw confetti in the air or, anything like that. It's just because you can't say that you connect if you don't have some type of connection, be it personal or be it someone close to you. It doesn't have to necessarily be you, or you can just say that this affects us all and I need to act a part of it, but make sure that you're not, bulldozing in saying that, I had a panic attack with a bag. I have anxiety. I get you. No, you can't do that. Learn and be an ally in everything. But it's important to use whatever, I don't want to say veil, but if I say veil, I'm using it in the Gothic term, so it's cool. But use whatever veil that you're able to, bestow our hand through your eyes. And so I do it where the community is vast, and there are a lot of us that are in the community in regards to alt. Marla knows this. A lot of people who are musicians are those that are even creating things themselves for others to try, but still staying within their community or subculture, while still being vegan, while still being, activist. You don't read the shell. Don't let that be your first thing that you see. And don't think that you have to change who you are to fit in with the perception or perceived look or representation that is expected. Because that has been one of the major things that I've seen happen within the goth community, and all communities at that. But I don't know why, I just again thought of the vegan Nazi thing, and I'm like, well, what are their thoughts on zebras? How do they work that out? I'm sorry, my brain's really random. I just kind of think, like, they're black and white. How do they do that? But I digress.
They
So
just
that-
hate zebras.
Aha! So, but yeah, I think that every niche is just whatever it's literally just what door do you have access to still be able to reach a whole bunch of people in the way that you are comfortable in sharing the message to the best of your ability. Use that as a tool to open and expand, and so we need less cookie cutter and more difference. That helps, because not everybody's cookie cutter.
No, not everybody's cookie cutter. Everyone is their own individual. I actually wrote something on when I was in high school. Each and every person is an individual with their own thoughts and feelings. We are allowed to, what did I say? It's like a long time ago. High school was a long time ago. I have it on a jacket downstairs. Each and every person is an individual with their own thoughts and feelings. We have the right to express our feelings, but not force them on others. Something like that. I might have messed up a little, but that was teenage me. So no surprise. I'm here now. So it's a great show. Anyone else have anything they want to say?
I don't.
Awesome. Okay, we'll close it out.
A dog
you.
somewhere did.
Sovereign, are you East Coast still?
No, I am Pacific Standard.
Welcome to the other side of the country.
It's been interesting waking up early in the morning since after break because I could be 8 something, and I was like, wake up at 5. I'm like, tight. So
It'll adjust.
but no, I'm really happy to be here. It's really beautiful. So
Okay, good. That makes me happy. All right, awesome. Let's close the show now. Thank you, Sovereign. Thank you, Marla. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Ellen. And once again, thank you for joining us for the Vegan Stew. Really glad that you're here. We'll be back next week. The topic next week will be winning strategies for having conversations with omnivores. And whatever else we decide to talk about that happens over the next week, because you just don't know. A lot of things happen, especially when we have 2 weeks. We want to talk about everything on this show that can possibly even be connected to veganism. And again, intersectionality, women's rights, people's rights, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ. We are all encompassing and all inclusive. And that matters. And hopefully you'll learn to be that way too if you're not. And if you are, just join in the conversation. Once again, subscribe and hit the notification bell for the Vegan Stew and Virtual Veg Fest. You know that we go live. Help us grow so that we can reach more people. Win prizes at virtualvegfestlive.com by hitting the contest tab. Win one of 12 prizes this month from our sponsors. And thanks to BB Kids, our Family Fun Zone sponsor and our sponsor of our lives this month. See you in Wilmington on April 23rd and Columbia, South Carolina on April 30th for our first 2 festivals of 2023. Have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you soon.